After her shocking death, Naomi Judd's husband of over 3 decades, Larry Strickland, broke his silence, and what he revealed left people stunned. What really happened behind closed doors in their marriage? Join us as we uncover the painful truths Larry Strickland finally shared. How Naomi and Larry's story began. In 1979, Naomi Judd met Larry Strickland at a music event in Nashville. At the time, Naomi was far from the country music star she would later become. She was a nurse working long hours to support her 2 daughters, Wynonna and Ashley. Naomi had gone through a difficult divorce and was raising her children alone. Life was tough, and she often worked night shifts just to make ends meet. But she never let go of her love for music. That love is what brought her to that event in Nashville, and it's where she met Larry. Larry Strickland had a very different background, but music was also the center of his life. He was a gospel singer with J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet. His career had even taken him on tour with Elvis Presley, where he sang backup during some of Elvis's most memorable performances. Larry was used to life on the road, long rehearsals, and performing for large crowds. He had been part of the music world for years, and while his name wasn't as well known as Naomi's would later become, he was respected in the gospel music community. When Naomi and Larry met, they quickly connected. Both shared a deep love for music, but they were also drawn to each other's personalities. Naomi was full of energy, passion, and determination. Larry was quiet, steady, and deeply loyal. They balanced each other out in many ways. Their relationship grew quickly, and after 10 years of dating and building a life together, they married on May 6, 1989, at Christ Church in Nashville. By the time they got married, Naomi had already achieved major success as one half of the Judds, the country music duo she formed with her daughter, Wynonna. The Judds had become one of the most successful acts in country music during the 1980s. They won multiple Grammy Awards, had several #1 hits, and were known for their strong harmonies and powerful performances. Naomi had gone from working night shifts as a nurse to standing on the biggest stages in country music. But with success came new challenges. Naomi was constantly under pressure from management, the media, and the demands of touring. The sudden rise to fame meant long days, busy travel schedules, and little time for rest. Behind the bright lights and awards, Naomi was starting to struggle. She was often overwhelmed, and the pressure sometimes affected her mood and relationships. During this time, Naomi was also facing serious health problems. In 1990, she was diagnosed with hepatitis C, a potentially life-threatening liver disease. The illness forced her to step away from performing and retire from the Judds at the peak of their career. Naomi had to go through difficult treatments and deal with the fear and uncertainty that came with her diagnosis. Larry stood by her side, but the emotional toll of her illness and the end of her music career created a lot of strain in their marriage. In the early years of their marriage, Larry continued touring with gospel groups, while Naomi tried to adjust to life off the stage. She began focusing more on television, writing books, and advocating for health and social issues. But behind the scenes, things were complicated. Naomi's health, the pressures of fame, and the challenges of blending a family with 2 daughters created tension. Even though there was love between them, their relationship was far from easy. Still, Naomi and Larry stayed together, holding on through the ups and downs. They had built a bond over time, and despite the struggles, they tried to support each other the best they could. But as Naomi's fame continued to grow and her inner battles deepened, cracks began to show in their private life, cracks that would later lead to one of the most shocking moments in their entire relationship. Secrets of a fractured marriage. Naomi Judd and her daughter Wynonna were one of the most loved duos in country music. As the Judds, they won multiple Grammy Awards, topped the charts with hit songs, and performed in sold-out venues across the country. They were praised not just for their voices, but for their image as a strong mother-daughter team. Naomi became known as a role model, someone who had raised 2 daughters on her own, worked hard as a nurse, and then rose to fame in the music industry. But what most people didn't see was the pain Naomi carried inside, even during her most successful years. In her personal journals, which were revealed after her death, Naomi often wrote about feeling insecure. She worried she wasn't good enough to keep someone like Larry around. She had a fear of being left or betrayed, even though Larry stayed with her through many tough times. She once wrote that she felt like she didn't deserve happiness or love. These fears were not based on anything Larry had done at the time, but they were rooted in Naomi's past, growing up poor, seeing her own mother suffer from mental illness, and going through a divorce as a young woman with 2 children. As Larry continued touring with gospel groups in the early years of their marriage, Naomi stayed home. After her hepatitis C diagnosis forced her to retire from performing, she shifted her focus to television appearances, writing, and social advocacy. She became active in health campaigns and mental health discussions, but these new roles didn't make family life easier. In fact, they added more pressure. Naomi was constantly in front of cameras or working on new projects. Larry's absences made her feel lonely, and she often felt unsupported at home. One of the most alarming signs of Naomi's emotional struggles came during a moment Larry would never forget. He was away on tour for almost a month. When he returned home, he found that everything in their bedroom had been destroyed. Naomi had torn apart their wedding photos and thrown his belongings outside. She didn't say much, but it was clear that she had reached a breaking point. Larry said it felt like she didn't trust him and believed he had betrayed her, even though he insisted he had done nothing wrong at that time. The incident was a shock to him, and it marked a turning point in how he viewed her emotional state. This event wasn't just a reaction to loneliness. It was a clear sign of Naomi's deep fear of losing the people she loved. Her strong emotions often came out in extreme ways. Larry admitted that he didn't always know how to help her. Sometimes he chose to remain quiet rather than start another argument, but that silence may have made things worse. These hidden struggles were carefully kept from the public for many years. While fans saw Naomi as a confident, joyful performer, Larry and her daughters knew a very different side of her, a side that was hurting, scared, and sometimes lost. And eventually, all that hurt would build up to something even more shocking. The day Naomi's pain took a dangerous turn. Roots of pain. Naomi Judd's story didn't begin with fame and music. It began in a small town in Kentucky, where she grew up in deep poverty. Her childhood was marked by constant challenges, not just financial but emotional. She was raised in Ashland, where her family often struggled to get by. More importantly, Naomi's mother reportedly battled mental illness, which left a lasting impact on Naomi from a young age. Living in a home where emotional stability was uncertain, Naomi learned early on to survive rather than thrive. This shaped how she later handled her own family and personal relationships. By the time Naomi was in her 20s, she was already carrying a heavy load. She became a single mother after her first marriage to Michael Simonella ended in divorce. She had 2 young daughters, Wynonna and Ashley, and worked night shifts as a nurse to support them. During this period, life was hard, and survival was the priority. Naomi focused on providing for her children, often sacrificing emotional connection to keep the household running. According to both daughters, the family didn't spend much time bonding in a warm or nurturing way. Ashley Judd, Naomi's younger daughter, spoke openly in her memoir All That Is Bitter and Sweet about the lack of emotional closeness in their home. She said they lived in survival mode. In her view, the family dynamic was more about meeting basic needs than developing deep relationships. Ashley described growing up feeling emotionally disconnected from her mother. She was mostly raised by her grandparents, while Naomi and Wynonna traveled for their music career. Wynonna, Naomi's older daughter and music partner, has also shared her own feelings of emotional distance. Despite being on stage with her mother almost daily during the peak of the Judds' fame, Wynonna felt like they didn't truly understand each other. She once said in an interview, "We sang together, stayed in the same hotel, and ate at the same table, but we weren't close." Their bond on stage often didn't reflect what was happening behind the scenes. As the Judds rose to fame in the 1980s, the emotional cracks in the family began to widen. Naomi became the face of resilience and hope for many fans. But at home, the pressure of the spotlight, long tours, and intense work schedules only made the emotional gaps in the family more noticeable. The image of a loving, united family was often just for the public. In private, there were misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and long periods of silence. The relationship between Naomi and her daughters suffered under the weight of her growing celebrity status. While she wanted to give them a better life than she had, the way she went about it often left them feeling alone. Ashley has said that she felt completely abandoned at times, not just physically when her mother was away touring, but emotionally as well. Wynonna, while closer to Naomi through their music, also dealt with unresolved tensions, especially when they disagreed creatively or personally. As Naomi transitioned from struggling nurse to country music star, her life changed dramatically. But those early emotional wounds didn't go away. In fact, success seemed to put more pressure on her to appear perfect, making it harder to deal with the pain she carried from her childhood and the distance within her family. She kept much of that pain hidden, choosing to push forward instead of confronting it. Over time, that unspoken pain began to affect every part of her life, including her marriage and her mental health. But there was one moment when all that unspoken hurt boiled over, and it involved something far more serious than torn photos: love and turmoil. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the marriage between Naomi Judd and Larry Strickland had become increasingly complicated. What had started as a passionate and hopeful relationship was now filled with emotional ups and downs. Behind the scenes of their public lives, Naomi and Larry were dealing with personal struggles that almost ended their marriage. Larry Strickland later admitted in an interview that, during this time, he seriously considered filing for divorce. The constant tension, emotional distance, and rising suspicion in their relationship were becoming too heavy to carry. He felt overwhelmed by Naomi's mental health challenges and how the couple seemed to grow further apart. But even as he thought about ending the marriage, he held back. Larry said he didn't want Naomi to feel abandoned again, knowing how deeply she feared being left alone. This fear had followed her from childhood and shaped many of her reactions as an adult. Then came the breaking point, an incident that remained a secret for decades. One evening, while Larry was away on tour, Naomi received a phone call. The caller was a woman she had never met before. The woman told Naomi that she was in love with Larry. She shared personal details and called him her soulmate. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but it changed everything. Naomi hung up the phone and didn't say anything to Larry right away. For the next 24 hours, she didn't speak to him at all. When Larry returned home, he was met with a shocking scene. Naomi had ripped apart their wedding photos, thrown his belongings onto the front lawn, and was holding a gun. In a moment of deep emotional pain and betrayal, Naomi pointed the gun at him and pulled the trigger. Larry later confirmed that she did, in fact, fire the weapon. The bullet didn't hit him, but the emotional damage from that night stayed with both of them forever. Larry did not call the police. He didn't tell friends, family, or the public. Instead, he quietly packed his things and left the house for a few weeks. Naomi eventually reached out with an apology. They agreed to keep the incident private, not just for their own sake, but also for their public image and the well-being of their daughters. Larry said, "We made a silent agreement for love, for the career, and for the children." For years, this moment was hidden from the public. In 1995, a television movie called Naomi and Wynonna, Love Can Build a Bridge, included a scene that mirrored the real incident, but it was presented as fiction. At the time, neither Naomi nor Larry commented on whether the scene was based on something that had actually happened. Many believed it was simply dramatized for the sake of the story. It wasn't until the 2025 Lifetime documentary, The Judd Family, Truth Be Told, that Larry publicly confirmed the truth. During a sit-down interview, he admitted for the first time that the shooting really happened. He didn't go into graphic detail, but he said it was an act born from Naomi's emotional suffering. According to Larry, she didn't mean to harm him. She was overwhelmed, frightened, and felt completely alone. He described her action as a scream for help, not from anger, but from deep pain and fear. Larry's decision to forgive Naomi and return to their marriage was not easy, but he felt that walking away would only make her feel more abandoned. Over time, they reconciled and continued to live together, though their relationship was never quite the same. The emotional scars from that night never fully healed, and as shocking as this moment was, it was only the beginning of a much deeper struggle Naomi would face in the years to come. Years of silent suffering. Starting in the early 2000s, Naomi Judd's mental health struggles began to deepen and become more visible to those close to her, though much of it remained hidden from the public eye. What many saw as a strong, vibrant woman was, behind closed doors, a person quietly battling serious mental illness. Over time, the signs of Naomi's suffering grew more intense and harder to ignore. Naomi was eventually diagnosed with several serious mental health conditions, including severe depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and sleep disorders. Each of these conditions on its own can be difficult to live with, but together they created a heavy burden that affected every part of Naomi's life. Her depression made her feel constant sadness and hopelessness. Anxiety caused her to worry excessively and become fearful of everyday situations. PTSD brought back painful memories and intense emotional reactions, and her sleep disorders made it hard for her to rest or find peace at night. She spent time in inpatient care facilities where she could receive round-the-clock medical and psychological support. During these stays, she was able to focus solely on her recovery without the distractions of daily life. Naomi also underwent electroconvulsive therapy, a treatment that uses controlled electric currents to help relieve severe depression when other treatments haven't worked. Despite these efforts, the period from 2011 to 2013 was especially difficult. Larry Strickland, who was still close to Naomi, described this time as when she became increasingly disoriented and isolated. He noticed that Naomi's mind seemed clouded, and she struggled to recognize familiar faces or remember important details. She withdrew from social interactions and even from her family at times. Larry recalled feeling helpless as he watched her slip further into her illness, unable to reach her or bring her back to the person she once was. During these final years, some video footage captured glimpses of Naomi's condition that were both heartbreaking and revealing. In these recordings, her eyes appeared vacant and distant, lacking the usual spark that had once defined her stage presence and personality. Physically, Naomi's health declined noticeably. She looked thinner, weaker, and less energetic. Emotionally, she seemed withdrawn, as if she were living in a world separate from those around her. These videos showed a woman deeply affected by mental illness, struggling to keep up appearances while fighting an internal battle few fully understood. The last days. In the final months of her life, Naomi Judd seemed weighed down more than ever by the emotional pain she had carried for so long. Even though she still appeared at public events from time to time, those close to her saw the signs of deep exhaustion and emotional struggle. In April 2022, just weeks before her death, Naomi made a sudden and private trip to Vienna, Austria. She didn't share the purpose of the trip with many people, and her husband, Larry Strickland, did not go with her. The reasons behind her visit remain unclear, even now. Whether it was for rest, treatment, or simply a break from the pressure she felt, the mystery adds to the sadness surrounding her final days. When Naomi returned to Nashville after the trip, those close to her noticed a change. She seemed even more tired and emotionally distant. Friends and family described her as looking worn out. Though she was preparing for a major milestone, her induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame alongside her daughter Wynonna, she didn't seem able to enjoy it. The excitement others felt didn't seem to reach her. She had battled mental illness for decades, and it was clear she was running out of strength. On April 30th, 2022, Just one day before the Hall of Fame ceremony, tragedy struck. Naomi passed away at her home in Tennessee. She used a registered handgun, and her daughter Ashley was the one who found her. Ashley later shared that she had been the one to comfort Naomi during her final moments, unaware of what was about to happen. The news of Naomi's death shocked fans around the world and devastated her family. The timing of her death made the loss even more heartbreaking. Naomi passed away only hours before she and Wynonna were scheduled to be honored at the Country Music Hall of Fame. This recognition had been a long time coming and was supposed to be a joyful occasion. Instead, the day became one of mourning and deep sorrow. Despite the overwhelming grief, the Judd family made the decision to go ahead with the induction ceremony. It was not an easy choice, but they believed it's what Naomi would have wanted. The event turned into a powerful tribute, filled with emotion and remembrance. Wynonna stood on stage and delivered a moving speech. Through tears, she spoke of her love for her mother, their complicated relationship, and her deep sorrow. She also honored Naomi's strength, creativity, and the legacy she left behind. While Wynonna spoke openly and emotionally, Larry Strickland chose a different way to grieve. He did not give a public speech during the ceremony. Instead, he stayed quiet, offering a silent tribute through his presence and composure. He later shared that the days following Naomi's death were filled with shock, confusion, and heartbreak. His silence spoke volumes about the deep personal loss he felt. Public reaction to Naomi's death was intense. Fans, fellow musicians, and mental health advocates all came forward to express their sadness and support for the Judd family. Her passing opened up important conversations about mental health, showing that even someone as admired and loved as Naomi could suffer in silence. But even after tragedy, the story didn't end. What came next would reveal even more about Naomi's legacy, her impact, and how her loved ones would carry on. The controversial will. After Naomi Judd's tragic death in April 2022, one of the most surprising and talked-about issues to emerge was the contents of her will. Back in 2017, Naomi had made a legal document that left her entire estate, worth an estimated $25 million, to her husband, Larry Strickland. What shocked many people was that this will did not leave anything to her two daughters, Wynonna and Ashley Judd. This revelation led to a lot of public discussion and speculation about the family's private relationships, especially between Naomi and her daughters. The news that Wynonna and Ashley were left out of the will raised many questions. Fans and media wondered if there was tension or unresolved conflict behind the scenes. For years, Naomi's daughters had been part of her public story, especially Wynonna, who had shared the stage with her mother as part of their famous music duo. It seemed strange they would be excluded from such a large inheritance. The will suggested deeper emotional wounds that were not visible to the public. Wynonna was stunned by the revelation, but she showed a strong and supportive stance publicly. She made clear that she loved her mother and respected her decisions, even if the will's contents were difficult to understand. Wynonna expressed that the pain of losing Naomi was greater than anything about money or inheritance. She wanted to keep the focus on Naomi's life and legacy, rather than the legal battles or family drama. Her words reflected a desire to heal and move forward despite the challenges. Ashley Judd, on the other hand, shared a different and more complex perspective. Through her memoir and several public essays, Ashley opened up about her feelings of abandonment and emotional struggle. She spoke honestly about the challenges she faced, growing up with Naomi, and the emotional distance she sometimes felt from her mother. Ashley's writings revealed how difficult it was to balance public success with private pain. She talked about trying to understand her mother's actions while also dealing with her own sense of loss and confusion. Adding to the complexity, after Naomi's death, some voicemails were made public that showed just how strained and conflicted the communication was between Naomi and her daughters in her final days. These messages revealed moments of hurt, frustration, and misunderstanding. At times, there were attempts to reach out and connect, but also times when emotions ran high and Words were left unsaid or misunderstood. These voicemails gave a raw and real look into a family struggling to stay close amid emotional pain. More personal materials also came to light after Naomi's passing. Journal entries and unsent letters were discovered, revealing how conflicted Naomi felt about her relationships with her daughters. In these writings, Naomi expressed deep love, but also confusion and guilt. She seemed to be wrestling with feelings of regret and longing for reconciliation. Some of the letters were apologies, where she tried to explain her feelings and the difficulties she faced as a mother, wife, and public figure. These documents gave a more complete picture of Naomi's internal struggles, showing a woman who cared deeply but was sometimes overwhelmed by her own pain. Larry Strickland's confession. After 2 years of quiet mourning, Larry Strickland, Naomi Judd's widower, has stepped into the public eye to share his experiences and advocate for mental health awareness. His candid revelations in the Lifetime documentary, The Judd Family, Truth Be Told, and an in-depth interview with People magazine have shed light on the complexities of their marriage and Naomi's mental health struggles. People.com. In the documentary, Strickland confirmed a long-rumored incident. Naomi once fired a gun at him after discovering his infidelity. Reflecting on this event, he stated, "It really happened. That's all I can say." Rather than placing blame, he interpreted the incident as a manifestation of Naomi's deep psychological wounds and emotional pain. He emphasized that her actions were not rooted in malice, but were expressions of her internal turmoil. Strickland also opened up about the challenges he faced in supporting Naomi during her battle with mental illness. He described the final months before her death as a very chaotic and hectic time, noting that Naomi's energy levels had significantly declined. Despite his efforts to encourage her to eat and exercise, he now wishes he had been more gentle and understanding. "If I had known where she was, I would have been much softer on her," he admitted. He expressed regret for not recognizing the severity of her depression and for not providing the comfort she needed during her darkest times. In his interview with People, Strickland shared the emotional toll Naomi's death took on him. He revealed that for over 13 years, he was by her side almost constantly, ensuring she had everything she needed. "When you have a mate that has a mental illness, you walk that path with them," he said. After her passing, he found solace in speaking out about their experiences, hoping to help others facing similar challenges. By sharing his personal journey, Strickland aims to break down the barriers that prevent people from seeking help and to highlight the importance of empathy in relationships affected by mental health challenges. His advocacy serves as a reminder that love and support can make a significant difference in the lives of those struggling with mental illness. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like,